Welcome to this ACA speaker meeting with the theme Surrender and then Step 1 to 3. We welcome our first speaker, which is Melinda.
Hi everybody, my name is Melinda and I'm an adult child. Preemptive statement. I trust that my higher power is going to allow the words to come from me today that are meant to come from me. I could have practiced and practiced and practiced, and I did, this talk, but I identified that that's my perfectionist trait. I'm going to let that go now. I'm going to turn it over so he can take it over, right? As they say in the meetings. And also, if I say something that maybe you don't agree with or that you don't like or you feel I'm misinterpreting anything from the 12 steps, I trust that you'll take what you like from what I say and you'll save the rest for later. Again, another thing that they say in the meetings. I love the slogans. Once again, my name is Melinda still. And if you're like me and you're relatively new to the program, I'm only 3 years in myself. I just want you to know I've been told it gets better. And I've experienced that it gets better since the day that I walked in. Also, if you're like me, you occasionally forget to breathe. I don't know how many of you may not really remember the last time they consciously took a breath, but I'd like to invite you to consciously take a breath right now. Some of you may have heard in the meetings that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And I am on board with that. And what that means is that we deserve the opportunity to have both of those needs met, you know? So enjoy the oxygen. It's free. You can take as much as you like. What a bargain, right? Okay. So the second or third, I guess, actually, I should probably just not number these because I'm going to go on tangents. That's how I do. If you're like me also, you're doing work that may never formally be recognized for how difficult it is. So let me take that opportunity right now. My heart is beating, pounding right now out of my chest. I'm surprised you can't hear it through the microphone. And at first I thought it was fear. But when you read the 12 traditions in Swedish, I recognized it for what it actually is, and it's love. I love each and every one of you. I am so proud of you. I'm proud of the work that you're doing to slow down or stop the regeneration of shame, blame, and trauma from our families of origin. Some of you may have heard trauma and dysfunction that isn't treated gets repeated. How many of you have kids or grandkids or stepkids or kids that you take care of? Wow. I do not. So kudos to you. The work you're doing, they won't know. And that's a good thing, right? Because that'll mean that they can't identify with the hard work that you have to do. Because you're stopping the train right here, right? I don't have kids, but what I'm doing is changing the community I work in, the workplace I work in. I mean, we're out there, right? Governments are changing because of the work that we're doing in these rooms. We're everywhere, and we're taking back what it means to be part of something greater than ourselves. We're taking back that word family, which when I walked into the rooms in March of 2016, family was the F word. You could have said any other 4-letter F word to me, and I'd have been fine with it, but say this 6-letter F word to me, and I'd recoil from you. I didn't like that word. So let me tell you a little bit about my family of origin. I know I don't have to tell you a lot, which is what's so great about ACA. You already know everything that there is to know about being from a dysfunctional family, probably. I love not having to start my story over from the beginning every time I meet one of you, because you get me. You get me. My dad is your dad. My mom is your mom. Right? The substances of choice they may have partaken in might not be the same, or the specific behaviors that they exhibited in our families of origin might not be the same, but those things don't actually differentiate us. They unite us. Isn't that great? I heard a speaker once who said, you come into the 12-step rooms and you'll find whatever it is that you're looking for. We are, after all, a generous bunch. If you confess that you're hungry, somebody's likely to offer you a meal, take you out for lunch or something. You need a job, surely someone knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who has an opening over there, here or there. And I couldn't have articulated it, but when I came into this program, I was looking for a family. One that didn't get drunk and yell at each other, one that didn't abandon each other after a fight, one that I could count on to listen without judgment. And that's what you've afforded me. So I want to say thank you again, and I'm going to say it again and probably again before the end of this talk. But specifically in my family of origin, I guess if there was, and we don't really, in my home group anyway, we don't really encourage the word qualifier. But let's just suffice it to say that my dad was an alcoholic and that he liked to take things to extremes. If it were work, it was work compulsively. If it was anger, it rarely stayed anger. It turned to rage pretty quickly. If it was civil service, it came at the cost of abandonment to his wife and kids. When something made my dad feel small or powerless, he'd also go to that extreme as if to say, you want to see small? I'll show you small. I'll totally disappear into this can of beer or into this garage for the next 3 weeks. With my dad, it was all or nothing. If it was volume, it was off or it was blaring. If it was speed, it was either stop or it was going 100 miles an hour. But even he couldn't outrace time. We were estranged for a very long time, about 15 years. And when we did reconnect, I learned that he had developed what's called chronic dysphonia. He'd lost his ability to speak in more than a whisper. His body had also given into the effects of self-abuse, workaholism, alcohol, and cigarettes. He couldn't walk for more than a few minutes without having to sit down. His tools for destruction were taken away, leaving room finally for my higher power to do some work, not on him, mind you, but on me. I was no longer afraid of my dad. When he came to the end of his life last June, I was able to do my 9th step bedside in a hospital in New Jersey. He was intubated and couldn't speak, but I told him I forgave him. And after that, I told him that I loved him. After that, because if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have found all of you. I told him I was going to be okay, and I am. And that's thanks to ACA. Now, my mom. I'll ask for your forgiveness here when I pull up my cell phone here because I took a picture. The red book is heavy, y'all, and I was coming, 19 hours to get here. I wasn't going to carry it. So I took a picture of page 24 and 25, which basically sum up my relationship with my mom. From page 24, from the non-alcoholic parent, we learned helplessness, worry, black and white thinking, being a victim and self-hate. We learned rage, pettiness, and passive-aggressive thinking. From this parent, we learned to doubt our reality as children. More times we have gone to our non-alcoholic parent and expressed feelings of fear or shame, and many times this parent has dismissed our feelings. We've been called selfish or too sensitive when objecting to the drinking parent's behavior. In some cases, the parent defended or even excused the alcoholic's behavior. And then moving on to page 25, it says, from the non-alcoholic parent, we learn to accept abusive or neglectful behavior as a natural part of life. For example, during an argument, some of us left or fled the home with the non-alcoholic parent, only to return in a few days as if nothing had happened. From this behavior, we got the message that it was normal to push aside our fear and return to our abusive or shaming parent. As a result, we can have great difficulty walking away from unfulfilling relationships as adults. We know in our minds that we should leave, but it feels normal to stay. So a lot of times in the rooms, when we hear the word relationship, we immediately go to intimate or romantic relationships. And there's more relationships in the world than those. This showed up in my life personally as my relationship to work. I stayed when I should have left. Often. This could show up even in little ways, like staying at a meeting sometimes at night when I really should have gone home instead, when my emotional or my physical needs weren't being met and I was putting the needs of the group ahead of my own. It's pervasive. This sort of self-abandonment that we learn from our families, that everything else in the world matters and you don't. The relationship with my mother's improving since my dad's passing. It's no longer so easy for her to isolate. My family, definitely, when I read the laundry list traits and the Red Book for the first time, the concepts of don't talk, don't trust, don't feel brought up what I guess we'd recognize now as some trauma responses. If anybody had told me at that point in my recovery, for instance, just the simple words, wash your face, I'd have probably had a meltdown. That was my mom's response to every traumatic event in my household. When I would cry, she'd say, go wash your face. There's actually a book called Don't Wash Your Face now, or Go Wash Your Face, or Girl, Go Wash Your Face, or something like that. I don't know what the name of the book is, but it has something to do with washing your face, and I don't like it. Because, to wash your face means wash that expression off. It's not welcome here. Wash away the tears. You don't really feel them. Or you don't need those fears or those feelings recognized. And so my relationship with my mom is getting better by the day. And once again, I have ACA to thank for that. So moving on, the topic of this conversation is surrender, steps 1 and 2 and 3. And surrender, step 1, to read it, we admitted we were powerless over the effects of alcoholism or other family dysfunction, that our lives had become unmanageable. This was difficult for a strong-willed girl like myself, especially in her 40s. A lot of my routines were already pretty set in stone, or so I thought, right? Higher power likes to shake that up a bit. And that when I came into the rooms, this sort of admit it we were powerless thing was an obstacle. I think it's an obstacle for a lot of us until we understand what liberation there lies in the word powerlessness. Or we confuse the word admit with submit, and none of us like to submit either. So I really had to do some deep digging, and I'm an intellectual soul. Although I am not a really big fan of reading generally, I am a big fan of researching sound bites. And I found that there was a guy, his last name was Thibault, and he did a lot of work with one of the other 12-step programs. He was a psychiatrist and psychologist in the 40s. And he did a piece differentiating compliance from surrender in alcohol treatment. And I found it fascinating that he describes somebody who is compliant, which would describe us ACAs in our people-pleasing traits, right? I could certainly do what a sponsor told me to do on the outside, but internally I was defying, I was like, I don't really have to do this. I don't really have to go to a meeting, So that sort of a house divided, that my conscious said, yes, ma'am. And my unconscious was like 2 big middle fingers up in the sky, right? Kept me on step 1 for several months. When I finally did admit I was powerless over the effects of alcoholism or other family dysfunctions, it was a little mini spiritual awakening for me. And in actuality, from that moment on, I stopped saying the first step the way that it's written, and I started reading it. I remembered I was powerless over the effects of alcoholism, and when I forget, my life becomes unmanageable. So moving on to step 2, the principle, or the step reads, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And, I love this one. I'm going off the cuff because I threw away what I wrote because I realized I had more things than I wanted to say. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I love pulling apart the words. You could really chew on the steps for a very long time, and I do. The word sanity alludes to the fact, like sanitarium, it's someplace clean. It's someplace pure. In fact, it's how we came into this world before we learned all the things that we know now to be as survival traits, right? And the power greater than ourselves. I also like symbols and stuff like that. I don't know. Math is a universal language, and I really appreciate that about math, right? We're all familiar with the less than, greater than, equal than signs. And so at first, my power greater than myself was the ACA rooms, because 2 is greater than 1. 16 is greater than 1. 12 is greater than 1. Anything is greater than me when I walked in those rooms. So it was easier for me to let go of the whole kind of what we'd call spiritual mumbo jumbo and trying to find a power greater than myself when I turned it into symbolic language. I just, it was difficult for me at first, the picture of a God, and I think it's difficult for a lot of us. I was not raised in any kind of a religious family. In fact, I think I started off going to Sunday school in maybe when I was 4 or 5 years old. And when I came home one day and I said my dad and I were fighting about something and he told me to do something and I said, well, you're not God. That was the end of Sunday school for me. There wasn't any space in our house for there to be something greater than my father. For the rest of my life, pretty much I endorsed atheism until I came to the 12-step program. It's a cliche, but some people say, I'd like to thank ACA for God or introducing me to God, and I'd like to thank God for ACA, right? Cliche or not, I would say that. I would probably get it tattooed on me. And then step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. I get confused sometimes because it's only in our 12-step language that we say understand God. And other programs, they say understood God. But regardless, I take understand to mean all past, present, and future participles of the term. Basically meaning that every day my understanding of God increases. Every time I have an interaction with another ACA and I onboard whatever their beliefs are and I kind of mutate them with what my own are, it encourages what I think now is becoming a coined term, which is along with the lines of gender fluid, is spiritually fluid, right? I think the recovery field and the people in recovery are endorsing this sort of spiritual fluidity that you get to make it up as you go. Because nobody has the answer today that they're going to have in 20 years, right? It's kind of a dull picture of the future if our understanding stays exactly how it is for the rest of our lives, right? Making a decision to turn our will and our lives, our will, what is our will? Our lives, what is our lives? This was dissected for me by my sponsor, thankfully, that our will is our thoughts and our life is our actions. So when I make a decision to turn my will and my lives over to the care of God, it means I'm staying curious. I'm living in a growth mindset. It's meaning, here's what I think about what's going on. I better run this through my filter of sponsors and my sponsee family. And I get to ask, is there another way I should be thinking about this? Is there something else I should see? That's an inward exploration using outside tools. And then the other half of that is my actions. Again, I get to run it through the filter. I get to run it through my sponsor. I get to run it through my sponsees. I get to run it through my higher power. And I get to stay curious and I get to ask, is there another way to respond to this that isn't reacting? And that has really liberated me. Never making another decision alone for the rest of my life didn't feel good at first. But again, it's that liberation that comes from I'm not in this alone anymore. When I was in this alone, life was scary. Life was too big for me, right? There's strength in numbers. And then finally, the overarching topic here is surrender. And I like to put this in the terms, I have a sponsor and I sponsor others. My sponsor has about 7 other little sponsee fledglings like me. She's got about 7, 8 years in the program now, and I have 3. My sponsees are vastly different from one another, and it's such a great experience to watch them grow. But what I call surrender is, in essence, surrendering my rights. And by rights, I don't mean civil rights. I mean the things I think I'm right about. So, for instance, I'm right to be angry about this. I'm right that he or she did this on purpose. I'm right about that the government is all bad or whatever it is, right? So to me, surrender means surrendering whatever I think I'm right about, because to not let go that I'm right about anything is to hang myself from a noose of certainty that everything is exactly how I see it and that everybody else sees it the same way. It's safe now, thanks to ACA, to say, I don't know. Growing up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional family, it's not safe to say, I don't know. I don't know is usually followed with, what do you mean you don't know? Or of course you don't know. Well, you're going to know now. If I wanted your opinion, I'd have given it to you. That kind of stuff is real common in my childhood lexicon. But in ACA, I am so glad to turn it over and say, I don't know. Let's find out. Let's find out together. Right? So my bottom, 3 years ago when I walked into the rooms of ACA, I was a chef for 25 years. And I don't know if any of you know any chefs. There's probably no chefs in the audience right now because you're probably all at work. If you're listening to this on tape at 1 a.m. in the morning, I wouldn't be surprised. I was a workaholic. Absolutely. That was the first trait that I identified when I walked in the rooms. That's actually what I came to ACA looking for. When I Googled the word, when I in search engined the word workaholic, what came up was not another 12-step program. It was actually ACA. And I spent 25 years working my butt off, 100-hour weeks. I hadn't, until I came here today, I hadn't taken a vacation in about 8 years. Working 7-day weeks, 17-hour days. Of course, it comes along with all the other great defects of character, like drinking too much and abandoning myself and sexually acting out with just about anybody who'd give me some time. It wasn't a pretty sight. I knew I needed something. I just didn't know what. And I walked into the rooms and I read the laundry list, and like a lot of you, my jaw hit the floor. And I was like, oh, do I know this person? Have I been on hidden camera? Is this one of those TV shows? So I immediately identified with all of the laundry list traits. And then somebody showed me the flip side, and I was like, oh, darn, I identify with all those too. When I walked into the rooms, and if you were in the business meeting this morning, then, the word predator has been a hotly debated topic, but I was a predator. That's my understanding of human interaction at the point when I walked in these rooms. You were either prey or you were predator. You either wanted something from me, or I was going to figure out a way to get something out of you. And I don't just mean sexually. I mean emotionally. I mean spiritually, right? And I think we all do this if we're going to be rigorously honest. We look at people in the rooms and we identify, do you have something I want? Do you have more emotional sobriety than me? Then I'll talk to you. If you don't, I don't got time for you. I'm here to recover, darn it. And that reduces us, right? That reduces us as human beings to just something that's part of one side or the other of a transaction. And we're worth more than that. So being in the rooms, I learned how not to be looking at others around me as either predator or prey. My understanding of my male counterparts in this universe as well changed drastically through ACA. When I walked in, I had a very stereotypical gender understanding of who men were, what they did, what they wanted, what their motivations were. And my brothers in ACA, I don't have a biological brother. I mean, my brothers, universally speaking, in ACA taught me so much about who I thought they were and who now I'm learning that they are. And there's a vast chasm between those two understandings. For the women in the room who don't know yet, maybe, men have feelings. Who knew? Right? Men have gone through some pretty traumatic stuff. And they, too, often grow up in alcoholic or dysfunctional families and exhibit the same traits we do. We can't draw a separation between us. We are all one, right? In the whole Buddha sense of the term. So that was my bottom. Today, I'm a cliche. I quit cooking in 2017, and I started taking courses to become a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. Of course. There's something about being raised in an alcoholic or otherwise dysfunctional family that leads to the healing professions, if you will, whether it be a masseuse or even technically chefing, I thought was part of the healing profession. I knew as a child that if I baked a cake and my family was shoving it in their face for 10 minutes, nobody could yell at one another, especially if I made the cake really dry. Then they really couldn't open their mouths and yell at one another, right? So I was convinced that I was in the culinary business for 25 years because I was going to bring people together over food, bring them around a common table. Isn't that so lovely, right? And then, anything good can be used as a weapon as well, right? Fluffy Bunny could hop in here, and depending on how hard I threw it, it would suddenly become a weapon. And that's what happened with my job. Self-inflicted weapon, of course, but so. Now that I am in this field, that I'm in this helping profession, that is quite literally a helping profession, no jumping through hoops to figure that out. I see life through a different lens. I ask every morning that I'm given the lenses that my higher power wants to look at each and every one of the people who sit down in front of me. I enter in every interaction with, what am I here to learn from you today? I'm not a source of power. I'm never the message. Sometimes I'm a servant to the message, right? And I do my best. It's really tricky in the United States, at least. I don't have any experience outside of it. But in treatment centers, they discourage addicts and alcoholics from getting engaged with ACA. I didn't believe it. I said, what do you mean? Oh, it's too soon. It's too soon in their recovery to look at this stuff. Oh, that's a lot of trauma. You don't want to open up that trauma box unless you're certified and you have this piece of paper that says you can do it. Well, nobody knows what happens behind those two doors, right? Or one door, I guess. When I'm sitting with another person, I talk about ACA because I can, because I have the experience, strength, and hope to do so. And it blows people's minds. You mean there's a place for people like me to go and talk about this stuff? I said, yeah, there is. Congratulations. Well, is it too soon? Everybody says it's too soon. It's never too soon to start looking at this stuff. So, in closing, my life is a joy today, and it's thanks to ACA. It's thanks to my higher power. It's thanks to my sponsor. Sponsorship is really important to anyone in the room. I want you to know, as soon as you've got one more meeting than another person, you're ready. Don't wait. It richens and deepens your recovery so much. I can't even begin because I'm only 4 minutes left. I can't begin to talk about how important sponsorship is. But I live in Minnesota, and I have a home group in Linden Hills, Minnesota. I also attend a meeting in Roseville, Minnesota, and I also attend a meeting in Edina, Minnesota. So if you're ever in Minnesota, look me up. We'll do some ACA together. Thanks.
Thank you, Melinda. We will now open the room for questions and answers. One person at a time raise their hand to ask a question. And you can use this mic.
Hello, I'm Hannah. I'm an adult child. Thank you for your speech. I wonder, did you say it's never too soon? Like if you have another addiction with food or sex or alcohol, that if you go to this too soon, that the other stuff it comes up so much trauma and stuff, so you go back to your, that's how I heard it, but you're so sure when you say it's never too soon, so I would like you to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, I guess it could be stated that I came into recovery breech, right, like with my feet out backwards or whatever breech birth is. I came to ACA after just a few meetings in another 12-step program. And when I came into ACA is when I started to make those other changes willfully, without that feeling of you must abstain or else you're not welcome at this meeting. You must abstain from overeating. You must abstain from alcohol. You must abstain from sex. You must abstain from narcotics, whatever the other programs endorse abstinence in. ACA is more forgiving. And so it allowed me the autonomy to want to make those changes before making those changes, right? And then when I decided I wanted to, then I could seek those other organizations out. But it was the structure, the warm welcome, the safety, the non-judgmental piece of ACA that allowed me that. And I wouldn't want to to jeopardize anybody else's recovery, obviously. If it doesn't work for somebody, then I encourage you to look at that and then maybe try another way, right? In Minnesota, we do recovery. We're pretty hardcore, right? Our official state logo is Land of 10,000 Lakes, but affectionately we call it Land of 10,000 Rehabs because there are, right? And so one of our license plate, our motto should be, we recognize all pathways to recovery. My pathway was ACA, which led to, I haven't had a drink since January 19th of 2018. And I haven't sexually acted out since May 26th of 2016. So, it's, I don't believe there's one way to do it.
Thank you for your talk. I'm curious about, you didn't have a time to talk about to be a sponsor and sponsorship. I'm curious about your thoughts about being helpful as a sponsor and or kind of helpful sponsorship.
So I understand that ACA has a unique sponsorship model with the fellow traveler. And it's nice that we have a label for that here in ACA. There's a gentleman who says, in regard to, I forget now what step, whether you're working a program or not, you're working a program. It's either a conscious one or an unconscious one. And it's kind of the same way with sponsorship. Whether you recognize it or not, your fellow traveling, whether or not you put a label on it as sponsorship or not, right? We're all fellow traveling right now. Like every single one of us in this room are fellow travelers with one another. It's the special relationship dynamic, I think, that as adult children of alcoholics, we fear that we're going to be told what to do. And we've had enough of that, thank you. I think that, again, as soon as you recognize that we recover better together, that fear of, I don't know enough, or what if I break them, or what if I tell them something that's not right, that's taking the wheel back into our hands and out of the higher powers' control, right? Like we think we're so special that we could break somebody. That's very self-centered thinking, right? So when it comes to sponsorship, my sponsor is not who I wanted, but she's exactly who I needed. When I walked into the rooms and sponsorship was being pitched pretty heavy in my group, we've got about 25 members. A lot of them have 8, 9, 10 years. Get a sponsor. And I picked this chick who had these cool, funky green lenses, and she had a short haircut, and she wore cargo shorts, and she looked kind of like fun. And I was like, I want her. And I asked her, will you be my sponsor? She said yes. I called her. She never called me back, right? So a few weeks go by, and another woman approached me, and she goes, well, have you been working with your sponsor? I said, no. And she goes, do you want a sponsor? I said, yes, I do. And she goes, well, then I'll be it. And I was so intimidated by this woman. If she's listening to this right now, she knows, right? She was so put together, right? Expensive frames. She dressed in nice clothing. She has some job that I'll never understand what it is. Something in finance. Who knows? She's 10 or 15 years older than me. I mean, it was nothing I would have chosen, right? But she was perfect. There's a piece of sponsorship that I really appreciate. It's kind of like the Bob Dylan song, when you got nothing to lose. There's a reason we don't get sponsored by friends or people who are going to understand us too much that we'd want to be friends with them, right? And that's because when then you give answers, when you're doing your yellow workbook, you're curating the words you choose to either impress or affect the other person. When it's somebody that you never expected, when it's somebody that you didn't choose, there's less pressure that if this relationship doesn't work out, it'll be the end of the world. It won't be the end of the world. You didn't expect it in the first place, right? And that was my experience. I can only speak to my experience, but had I waited, I might not be sitting at this table right now. Everything happened how it was supposed to, I believe.
There's room for one more question.
Hi, I'm Sunana. I'm in ACA. I just had a question. What made you kind of what kind of made you want to find the Al-Anon program? Like for me, I was kind of under a dark cloud for a long time. I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I was the problem until I left the dysfunctional home and I found Al-Anon. So what made you want to find ACA?
Sure. June 19th of 2015 was Father's Day. I hadn't spoken to my dad since 9/11, and Wild Hair had me call him up on Father's Day. And within 8 minutes of picking up the phone, the conversation went from, hey, how you doing? How's the truck? To screaming obscenities at each other and me saying I wished he would die. So I was emotionally rattled by that. Go figure, right? And when I got off the phone, I couldn't help but recognize that all this stuff I had thought I had buried and put in the past, that's how strong denial is, right? That current of thought wasn't still coursing through me. It had been coursing through me the entire time, and I just wasn't aware of it. I had it so buried underneath work, underneath drinking, underneath guys, that I couldn't see that this vein of discomfort, restlessness, irritability was just waiting to be triggered. And so it was a pretty big trigger. I actually drove that day because where I was living, I didn't recognize that there were any ACA meetings at the time. My first step was into an Al-Anon group. And it was there about 6 months later. I was sitting in a meeting, and, call me woo-woo or not, y'all. This is what happened. This was my experience. I was sitting in a meeting, and I heard a voice from behind me, and there was nobody there. And it said, you will always know love. Just got to find it. And so the next meeting I went to happened to be an ACA meeting. And I, like I said, found what I was looking for. It's a big trigger. Big trigger is what got me in. That's a short answer to that question. But I'm from New Jersey originally, so I don't believe in short answers.
You done?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Let's give a last round of applause for Melinda. I would like to welcome Adreas.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Adreas. I'm an adult child. Thanks for your sharing. And thanks to the committee to invite me to come here and share my experiences. And welcome to all of you come here to Malmö in Sweden. I'm happy we had such a lovely weather. It's not always. This is like summer for us. So I'm here with my daughter, actually. She's 12. Recently, her mother got very depressed, so she's living with me full time. So she's here with me, and we were walking in Malmö. I've been here before, but she never been here before. So we were out for a long walk, and she used to be a teenager, so she's a bit grumpy. And then I'm so what's going on? What's up? No, but you never let me express my feelings. That was kind of true, in the past. But yes, I know. So you want to talk about it? Yeah. Okay. So what's the emotions you got inside? Can you put names? Oh, it's anger, fear, resentment, and all those stuff. And I said, okay, can we sit down and talk about it? Yeah. So we go and find some place in the shade, and after a while, there's different things, but the main topic is, it's actually you, Daddy. Yeah. And we talk about it for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then I ask her if it was a 10 before, how angry you are, how are you now? Oh, it's 5, but I'm also very hungry. And for me, it's a mixed experience to be there with her, because I made many wrongs to her. I didn't know how to be a parent. I mean, I didn't know how to do it the wrong way, but the right way I had to learn here. So I feel guilt and sadness that she's actually, because she's pushing herself down. She doesn't just, but then I'm also very happy that we can talk about it and she can share it and let it go. And if I didn't come to this program, it never happened. I would probably be dead. But I grew up in Stockholm. It's about 600 kilometers up north. It's the capital of Sweden. I grew up in the suburb with young parents. They were 19 and 22. And my father is an alcoholic, and my mother is mentally ill. And it was okay for about 3 years, and then he left. So we were alone for a year, and then my mother found our neighbor. And I was terrified about that guy. He was like 2 meters and 110 kilo. And I mean, all the kids on the yard was really afraid of him. He was a scary guy. And he moved into our place. He had a younger daughter. And he was a psychopath and a child molester and a sadist. So he could come to kindergarten, pick me up and take me home and beat me up because he felt bad. That was his alcohol, his drug, to beat me. That was really bad. And he was doing that for 9 years. So when I was 14, I left home. I lived on the streets on Stockholm, slept on the bus and on the trains and bushes in the park and stuff like that. I was really angry. When I was 5, 6, I started to steal and to be violent. First time I hit someone that he was bleeding in his forehead, I was 6 years. I took a wooden stick and cracked his head up. Started to have sex when I was about 6 years old. And then when I was 14, I started to use drugs and alcohol, and violence was increasing. And I was doing that for a bit more than 10 years. And heavy drugs, psychedelic drugs, and in and out from youth prisons and prison. And I was very good at doing criminal stuff. So I went all over Europe. I was in prison in Germany and Norway, and I did stuff a lot and hurt many people really bad. And then I was 25. I had a daughter. And when she was about 3 months, I was in Holland doing my smuggler thing with drugs. And I just had some kind of wake up. I realized that I was sick or something. It wasn't right because I didn't have any love for her or for anyone. I was just mean all the time. So I made a decision, I'm going to change my life. I had no clue how to do it. But I stopped with everything. And after 4 months, the police, they took me for something actually I didn't do, but still I was in the custom jail for 6 months, and I could cool down. And then I come to prison and then to a treatment center where they had a 12-step program. And I was super scared. I mean, really scared. My first meeting was with 3 guys in a room. And one guy says, and he started to read some strange texts about God and stuff, really scary stuff. and then he's talking. And I made a comment, no, you should be quiet. I said, you tell me to be quiet? We have a problem here, you know. So it was almost a fight in my first meeting. I didn't like people to tell me to shut up. But then he explained, no, you're going to share afterwards. It's one at a time. I never, see that before. So it was a culture shock for me. Then I went to some NA meetings, and they talk about addiction as a disease. I said, no, that's not me. I use drugs all the time, but I stopped. And to AA meetings, and it was okay. And they say what you said. You should not attend to ACA meetings. So then I want to go. Because they say you can't. So I was when they said after 3 months you can try it. So I was trying to sneak there, but I couldn't. And then after 3 months I came to ACA. And when you read the laundry trades, I was like, whoa. It was like everything. And I felt like, okay, if someone can write this shit down, they've probably been figuring something out. So this might help me. And I left the treatment center and I stayed, that was even more up north, another 500 kilometers up from Stockholm. And there was a small group in Härnösand. I think we were like 5 or 6 people. Me, an older guy, and one other girl in my age, and some elder women. And actually we're 3 here today from that small group. I haven't seen in so many years. So it's a big love to see you here again. And I remember my first service meeting. And also not the first I'm going to be the leader of, because I sat in all those meetings, and the women, they talk so much about actually nothing, the way I saw it, because it was the same thing every time and never a decision. So I said, when I'm going to be the leader of that service meeting, we're going to do something. That's how I learned what consensus means. And I said, what? So we're never going to agree on something? No, but we... I mean, this is 18 years ago. So then I learned what is consensus. I think it's wonderful. But not when I was 26. I have 2 daughters, Isabella, who is here with me, and I older one, Felicia, and she's 19 today. And I had her for every 3rd weekend, and that was my life. I was like, I'm gonna be a parent for her. I'm not gonna be like any of my fathers or my mother. I'm gonna do something different. And I didn't feel much with other. I could have feelings sometimes. I went to school because I didn't finish any school when I was younger, so I went to folkhögskola, and I came home, and I had bought a security door, and I lock all the locks, and then I throw up, and that was how it was for 2-3 years. I had nightmares about every night the first 2 years, and I've been shot. I've been stabbed with knife. I shot people. I did terrible stuff. So it took some time just to get out of all that old lifestyle. Is there air coming in here? Wonderful. Super. It's really warm here. Nice. Anyway, so I came home. Actually, I even shit my pants of anxiety and, so much. In those days, I never heard, about pills and doctors and stuff. We went through it. I just took the pain and went to meetings. I shared about it. I got a sponsor after some time. There wasn't much literature, so we had other texts we read. And the big book from AA. Today there is wonderful literature. But I did it. And this thing about God, I didn't. I was really afraid. I was thinking that I'm living in the shades. So if I keep there, it's going to be fine. But if I make a prayer, he will know where I am and come and strike me down. It's going to be like, I was afraid to go out if I'm going to do that prayer. But when I came to the second step, I have to, do something. And someone said, just be honest. I'm not going to curse too much in the mic for you. But the first prayer was quite bad. It was honest. I was really angry because I didn't believe in God, but you never know. And it's really shit God, sorry. Because, how did I grow up? It was really bad. For anyone, it's really, really bad. I say, how can you exist to let your children have this kind of upbringing? It's not right. I couldn't get it. But then the second step came there anyway. So I said, okay, let's try. So I did that cursing and I addressed God the way I thought was suited. And then I looked out to see if there's some lightning going on or it's going to kill me for every bad thing I did. Nothing really happened at all. No bad thing, no good thing. And I've been praying many times since then. Many times. In the third step to make a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God, I think that's something that changed every year. I've been working the steps for almost 19 years. So it's very different from the first 5 years, the middle 10, the last 5 years. And I think it's developing and maturing. And there's so many things that happen. If I had 5 hours, I would tell it. But at the end of it, what happened is that I realized that if my children would run out in the forest and get lost, and no matter how they would address me, screaming somewhere, I would be so happy to find them. I would be overwhelmed just to know they are alive and they long for me and they want to be found. And that's what I realized with God. He doesn't care how I pray. He's just happy that I raise my hand and say, pick me up. It's a long story to really hate that. I went to church and did sexual things with other women because I was angry with God. That was like my things to get even with him when I was still using drugs and stuff. So to go from there to really feel that God loves me and he takes care of me. That's many years of recovery to make that happen. But it started up to make a second step and to try it out and to make a decision that I'm going to work this program. I have a friend, he said once that the will of God is that we work the steps. And I say, yeah, I can relate to that. That's my third step. What I actually give my life to is to work the steps. And when I had been in the program about 10 years, I was really fed up with all of you guys. I was about 35 years old and I think I know everything. I heard thousands of sharings. I grew up in this, but I had nothing. I could not hardly write Swedish, less English when I came to the program. And so I was really tired But still, I didn't let go of the meetings. I didn't do much step work for maybe 2 years. I did some other therapy and stuff. But then I felt this is the thing for me. I just love the way the steps works. I love it. It's in my brain. It's a part of me. I don't actually think much about it. It just works. And today we're on the bus on the way to the city of Malmö, and my daughter says, "Oh, Papa, what are you going to share about today? What is your topic?" And I'm going to explain that to her. And I said, let's say you're in a hole, and you're stuck in the hole, and you can't get out, and you're all alone, and you feel despair, and you're really trying to get out of the hole, but you can't, and you don't believe there is any help to get you. You still try to get out of that hole. That is when you need to surrender. But that is very hard to surrender if you don't believe there is something that can help you. For me, the first step is very hard to take without, have some progress in the other steps. I think the first step is what I've been thinking about most about all the steps. I mean, we say in that we are, how is it in English? You had that nice on a paper. Yeah. We admitted we were powerless over the effects of alcoholism and other family dysfunction, that our lives had become unmanageable, which we need to do. It's like to be in that hole, and to get out of the hole, we need to stop doing what we're doing. But on the other hand, we're not powerless if we're powerful. And I think that the higher power, I mean, the way I see it, doesn't really matter how we connect or how we believe or how we address that higher power, what we call it. It or he or she or whatever, it just loves us anyway and want to have a connection. And then we get power again. It's like I'm out of power, I'm like powerless, and I want to be powerful. And then it's much easier to realize that I have problems because I have a solution. But it's really hard to be in the first step and let it all go. So for me, I see it's every year I let a little bit more go. And I found a little bit more of who I truly am. But that wasn't pleasant at all. When I came to the program, I think it was perfect. Oh, I'm a adult child. That child part I could identify with. The grown-up part, I don't know. I was 25, but I was a father. But still, I didn't like that part. What do you mean to be adult? But now I realize that the first step is really about growing up. I mean, it's one thing to be, you have the child's ability to, just be alive, but to be childish is completely different. And that was me. I was childish. I didn't want to be responsible. What is that? I'm much better in Swedish. Responsible. And to go to work, I still don't like that many times, actually. I like cash day and those kind of things. But to take I have my own companies and I have employees and they make a lot of mess for me. And I have to come to customers. I don't like that. But I have to handle it. That's how I support myself and my family financially. So there was so many things that today is easier to take in the first step than when you're new. For me, it was really, really hard to take much of the first step in the beginning. I see many people come to meetings for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, and then I'm good. They think. I'm not judging. No, I'm judging. And I'm sorry. But I say there's so much more to get. So don't think that you're good enough. I was there when I had about 10 years. Then I was fine. And I'm so happy I didn't stop this. That walk in the park today with my daughter would have been different. There would not be second part. It would have been, shut up. You have everything. You should not be complaining. When I was a child, then you should have seen I was beaten up, for 9 years. And she was like, oh, and in the best, she would maybe come here one day. But now maybe she doesn't have to. Oh, this is a wonderful fellowship. But get me right on that point. I mean, I would be happy if she doesn't need to. If she can, just get access to herself naturally. So this is also natural because we have it from our higher powers. It's wonderful. But you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Andreas. We will now open the room for questions and answers. One person at a time raise their hand to ask a question.
My name is Dominic. I'm an adult child from Germany. Hello.
Hello. Welcome from Germany.
You mentioned that that the behavior changed from working the steps again and again and again and again, and you don't have the time to address that more specifically. But I was thinking maybe you can just wrap it up and just point out the highlights or something like that. Thank you.
It's 19 years. But when you ask that, I get something from my higher power, and this is my fourth step, my fourth step. And it was a long one. When I did my ninth step, the first time was 420 persons I have harmed. I'm still working on it. But I'm with my sponsor in Uppsala, and we're walking in the town for about 3 hours, and I'm super scared. I mean, to my bones. And then after 3.5 hours, he says, because I was asking him 100 questions, because I want to know if he could handle it. My fourth step, fifth step. And then he says, Andreas, now we're just going to go and do this. You're not my sponsor. If you want to ask more questions, you have to be my sponsor first. And he'd been in the program for 24 years. I was about 3 years. And so we go to the place where we're going to do this. And I mean, he's a wonderful person. For 3.5 hours with my stupid questions. And then 4 hours without the break. I can't do that. For my sponsors, I can't. But 4 hours without the break, I sat and read it. I read it. And when we're done, I feel so small. And there was a lot about my stepfather. I mean, we had really bad time. And then when everything is done, I'm like in my chair like this, what he's going to say, what he's going to do. And there was like bad stuff. And then he's leaning forwards to me and he says, Andreas, what Håkan, what your stepfather took away from you, I'm going to give it back to you. And I was thinking, if you're lying, I'm going to kill you. That's the truth. And we're still the best friends after 16 years. He's also an alcoholic, and he relapsed 2 years after that when he has 25 years clean. And then he was drinking for 2 years. And now he has 11 years, 12 years again. So I have longer time than him. So now I'm going to ask him some questions, next time we see. No, so he lives in the Ferry Islands now, and I go there every year to visit him. And he's still my sponsor. And I don't know how magic like that can happen, but it happens here. And I got about 2,000 stories like that. I'll tell you another one is that every time I confronted my family with what was going on, because my family on the outside was perfect. Like my father is alcoholic, but he didn't live with us. And my parents, they are both teachers, and my stepfather made films on TV, so he was a bit famous. And after every beating, I had to sit very straight from him and say I'm sorry 10 times, and he took his fingers up for every time like this. And he wasn't happy until I realized that it was actually my fault. So I really believed I'm so bad that he needs to beat me, so I'm going to be better. And then I came to ACA and started to question that. First time I came to my home, and of course I went to my mother and said, hey, I don't think something is not right here. And we started to have a conversation. He got cancer. So she didn't have time. We had to stop talking about it. I had to step back. He had cancer. And after 3-4 years, he got better from the cancer. So I did some course, and I think I really need to confront my parents. And then he had cancer again. And then another 5 years, same thing happened. And then I had like a sharing group with my siblings, my 2 older sisters and my younger brother. We had a sharing group for 2.5 years. That was also from the program. My brother now is also in the recovery. And then I really, and then the siblings, actually my younger sister, she broke this curtain and says, I remember one time he beat you. Because they said, no, my mother said for all my life, no, you're lying. That's a child's fantasy. It's never happened. And then I came and I said, Matilda, my sister, she actually remembers this. Then he died from cancer. And when he's a few weeks from dying, I have from my higher power, I'm meditating and praying, and I get that I must go to him. And my higher power didn't say to me, you should forgive him. He said, you should tell him that you love him. I said, that's not true. I hate him. I mean, lie detector. I hate him. Still, this is almost 5 years ago. But then I got really sick, like a fever and cold, and I was in bed for like a week. And I realized this is not going to go from my system until I surrender and see what's going on. So I surrendered, and I look inside and I say, yes, there is love for him. He was the only guy, he was my role model. Even though he was really bad, he was the one I looked up to. I wanted to be like him in many ways. And a few times actually, I really did love him. And when I realized that, the day after I was quite well. The fever was gone, and so I came to his home the day after that. And this big guy, really big guy, he was yellow, skin and bones. His belly was swollen, and when I see him there, I take his hand, and we have a mutual meetings, silence. And I tell him, Håkan, when I was a child, you were the one I looked up to. You were the one that was my role model. You were the one that was there for me. And we both cried. And I don't believe so much in strange stuff, but something strange will happen. There was like something under his blanket that was moving like this, like from the Alien movies or something. I don't know. I mean, I saw it, but I don't know what to believe about it. And he comes up, and he was, and then he said, and I who was the devil when you were a child. And that's what we needed. I told him I loved him, and he told me he was the devil. So things like that. If I had stopped work the steps after 10 years, that wouldn't have happened. That's my answer.
Hi, I'm Melinda. I'm an adult child.
Hey.
You have quite of answered the question already, but I want to ask, how has it been to come to the ACA program quite young and then, in a sense, growing up with it and have it in your life for so long? Thank you.
I have nothing else to compare with, so it's wonderful. It's great for me. It's really nice.
Hi, my name's Liam from UK.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for your share. I identified a lot with your story. Very, very much so. And my question is, like your past life, your criminal life, was obviously a long time ago, and you've turned it around with ACA and you run a business and stuff. And my question is, like, does part of you now still kind of feel like your old life is really you and this new one is you acting? If that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, because it was a very severe part of my life, so it's still there. It's still there, but for the most of the times it's an asset. I still go to other 12-step programs, and there are many young people there with the same situation, and the worst shit I did is my biggest asset when I'm doing my 12-step work. So it's alive. I mean, sometimes it's alive in a bad way, but most of the times in a good way. And I've been writing poetry for many years, and that's the poetry part. Actually, is how my mother finally admitted what happened, because there was so much poetry, and I put a lot of text on my Facebook, and even kids from school who saw stuff, they talk on the Facebook, so that was like a breakthrough. For many years I was very ashamed. I mean, of course I'm not happy for what I did, but for who I was, I'm not ashamed anymore. I see that that was who I was, and that is part of my story, and I use that part of the story to help people to come to this better 19 years than the first 25.
Let's give a last round of applause for Andreas.